Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IraSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is January 9th, 2025, game day for Notre Dame in the semifinals against Penn State in the Orange Bowl. We're just going to talk about that game. We've dissected it a bunch. We've previewed it a bunch. And so we're just going to talk about our kind of final feelings on it, just kind of spitball around about ideas, some things that come up in the chat, whatever people want to talk about, and just get ready for the game tonight at 7:30 Eastern time, 4:30 Pacific time. So thank you everyone for tuning in today. If you like what you hear, and what you've heard previously, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell soon, wherever it is. We are going to go live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. And as always, this show is brought to you by ESQ Clothing, founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best custom clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best in 2024. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or the perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com. Book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. A little bit of housekeeping here. We do have a new Dimes with Dara episode is out on our YouTube channel. Another reason why you want to subscribe and hit the notification bell. You would have seen that pop up. I talked to Dara about she's leading her league in Hungary. She's She's leading the league in scoring right now, Jamie. She's getting buckets, as we like to talk about. So she's thriving out there. We talked about Notre Dame women's basketball team that's thriving. They're playing great, leading the NCAA in 3-point percentage, which is unbelievable. Olivia Miles is on fire from deep. So check us out. Check that out. Jamie, you talked to me about before we started. The more you think about it, you're feeling good. Why don't you share those thoughts with the people and kind of just where your mind is at before the game tonight?
Yeah, I think just like the more I've dug into Penn State and kind of like the matchup in general, the more I just kind of like Notre Dame to win the game. And there's going to be different pieces of it that can affect the game, right? Like turnovers, obviously huge, right? And what Penn State did against SMU and Boise State, they turned the ball over 7 times, created 7 turnovers. Obviously, they had a couple of pick sixes versus SMU, which was huge. But those teams had 8 red zone trips, but they only scored 1 touchdown on those red zone trips.
Yeah.
And that ultimately is how you win games. That's good defense. It's, you give them absolute credit for that. But it's kind of like the pieces that led to them getting that many red zone opportunities, the really poor tackling, giving up big plays after the catch, like things like that, kind of, I think, bode well for Notre Dame in the matchup too. Obviously some of those like long runs that if you're going to break tackles, you got to turn those into long runs, and some of those you got to turn into touchdowns, right? And in the red zone, you got to convert, right? You got to convert, you got to score. And Notre Dame has been a really good red zone offense. Obviously, Penn State's been an awesome red zone defense.
Like everything you just said, like Notre Dame, they can convert their missed tackles into long touchdowns via the run from 3 different players, which is important. And Notre Dame's been a great red zone team, to your point. So they kind of hit on both of those points that you're talking about there.
Yeah. So I think, when you look at that kind of stuff, and and just a reminder too, like I said, that the 57 missed tackles in the last 3 games, like compared to 21 in the last 3 games for Notre Dame, right? Obviously, they only had 4 against Georgia, and Notre Dame didn't give up those red zone opportunities, right? And obviously they were good when they did, but they just, they didn't give up those same chances to score. And I just think that there's going to be different factors that play into the game, and certainly like, like if Penn State is able to run as well as they have been, obviously that's a game changer, right? And if Notre Dame,
they become a different team.
yeah, that changes it. Those kind of things change everything. But one thing that I know with Notre Dame this year is that when teams have success at something early on, that stuff gets fixed within a game. That just always happens with the coaching staff, with the players. There's adjustments made, and they've been able to do that all year. That's one of the biggest reasons why they've won. And even when they've kind of had like, fits and starts to beginning of the game, they've adjusted and been better. And then also when they've played teams that have had specifically on offense against a defense that has had certain things that are like, man, this is like their big weakness. The players, Mike Denbrock, the coach staff in general, like they found ways to exploit those things. And there are some things with Penn State that I think are, issues that I think that Notre Dame can take advantage of.
Yeah. I mean, we think they can run the ball on them. We think that they can kind of take advantage of their interior, kind of on both sides of the ball, right? Again, not to say that those are bad players for Penn State on either side, but listen, you get to the semifinals, you're playing good teams, and Notre Dame's a good team. I think something that kind of is hard for, and now I've seen it from 3 fan bases, right? It was Indiana first, it was Georgia next, and now it's Penn State. I think it's hard for people to conceptualize that. Like people keep talking about Notre Dame's schedule, and their company, like it. Dude, like I don't think people grasp like that previous argument kind of doesn't matter anymore when you beat Indiana and then you beat Georgia. Like
it doesn't matter when you're 13-1 at
right,
this point in
like
season.
at some point you're and not just that, but when you look at their EPA per play numbers on both sides of the ball, like I don't think people can conceptualize it, and so I think that's tough for them, and especially when when you look at matchups, like they just assume that Penn State, even honestly, Jamie, even in the ISD intel that we had that I think it was Matt put together talking about, how Penn State insiders feel about Notre Dame's team and what Notre Dame can do against them. Like Notre Dame hasn't seen a front seven like Penn State. What? Like what? The first game of the season was against Texas A&M. Louisville had a good front. Indiana had a good front. Georgia had a great front. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that is one part of this where it's like, look, Notre Dame has been tested, and I don't think people understand that to the degree that they have. I don't know if that's due to just bias or if whatever it's due to, but I don't think people really
I think it's a bit of bias because, I mean, whatever, I won't reveal anything, but I kind of know a little bit about some of the sources that were talking there, and there's some obvious bias there. It's not to say that Penn State doesn't have a great front seven. They do. They absolutely do.
That's not the point. Yeah.
Yeah. And anyone who thinks that like, man, this pass rush isn't going to get after it, or like, no, they're not going to be Penn State's not going to be able to, Notre Dame's going to run them out of the building. No, I mean, I don't think that at all. Like, it's going to be a good game and should be a close game for most of it. And like I said, they've done things in terms of like creating turnovers lately and playing and winning in the red zone that have won them games. Right. So I don't think that anyone should think that like it's not knocking them and saying like, hey, they're this or they're that. But you just look at like, you can't just say like they just played Georgia's front seven, or they just played Georgia, they got 3 first-round picks on their defense.
Yeah.
Multiple guys who are going to go in like the 2nd or 3rd round on their defense. There isn't a Penn State's defense isn't as talented.
And then you say,
then say you haven't seen it. Like
what?
I mean, then they weren't paying attention to what was actually going on, right? I don't know. I think there one thing too, and I wanted to talk to you about this because I do think it's kind of interesting in that if you look at like where, say like Dane Brugler, the Athletics Dane Brugler, who I think does a really good job for the most part for the Athletic, is that he's their NFL draft guy, right? Puts together a really great,
the beast,
right? The big scouting notebook. on all those things. It's fantastic. Highly recommend it for people who are like NFL draft people. If you're an NFL draft nerd, it's awesome. Filled with a ton of info. I find it super interesting every year. He was breaking down, and he always does this kind of like before these like big matchups. And when they get into these things, it's like the top NFL prospects on each team. And if you kind of look at like where Notre Dame is in terms of draft eligible guys, like Notre Dame has they're fourth in terms of draft eligible top end guys, right? Because Ben Morrison obviously is not playing. Riley Mills, I wouldn't say is a top end guy, but he's an NFL draft guy. Botello's he was, if he played like this for the rest of the season, he was going to be drafted. Like, so there's things like that, that obviously are part of them kind of missing things and all that too. But they don't have Abdul Carter's going to be like a top 5 to 10 pick, right? They have, Tyler Warren is going to be the top tight end off the board. Probable first round pick. Who knows? Depends on how they view tight ends, obviously, right? But like, he's a probable first round pick. Like, those guys are game wreckers, right? Denied Dennis Sutton is like maybe a back half first round, early second round pick. Like, he's very, so it's, even if Carter's out, they still got another guy who's like a dude, right? So, and they have other dudes that are NFL picks, right? But it's funny because I think like you look at Notre Dame's guys, and Notre Dame will have a fair amount of guys getting picked this year. I think you're going to have probably like 7 to 9 guys who get drafted. I think that's pretty fair to say. But they don't have those first rounders. And if you think about it, most of their guys that I think are the best NFL draft prospects on the team right now are guys who aren't going to be in the draft for 1 or even 2 more years, right? Like, I think I don't know what Leonard Moore is going to run, but I would say right now he's going to be a pretty high pick eventually, right? Like, fair to say.
KVA.
Like, guys, KVA, Drake Bowen, I think Drake Bowen, if he's playing like this in his first year, like, he's gonna, like, that guy is gonna be probably like a top 100 pick in the NFL draft if he keeps playing like this and better, right? Like, which I have no doubt that he will. Like, Jalen Sneed, who is draft eligible, but obviously is playing now at a different level than he's at, and you can see how he's going to have a lot of value to the NFL. And like, JD Price isn't a guy he's draft eligible. He's not going to go in the draft next year. He's going to be drafted. I would be pretty shocked if he wasn't. And obviously Jeremiah Love, obviously that's a question about this game and stuff too, but he's probably going to be a first round pick, right? And then multiple guys in the offensive line. Like, I'm telling you right now, obviously Emil Wagner, who's everyone's, man, this guy's the guy's going to be a high pick. Like, this is his first year starter. If he stays another 2 years and just is just incrementally better the next 2 years, he's going to be a high pick, right? So there's a lot of that on the team, which is crazy because, like, I think there was 18 guys in the Georgia game on defense that played 20 plus plays. 12 of them have eligibility left that are very likely coming back to Notre Dame next year, right? That's a lot of dudes. And a lot of those guys are going to be NFL players, right? So it's weird. Like, Adon Schuler, another guy, right? Just whatever. We can keep going. Obviously, I forgot to mention X Watts is like, I don't care where he's viewed as a thing. He's obviously a clearly elite player. And if the guy isn't drafted in the first 2 rounds, that's the NFL's fault, because I think he's going to be a great player in the NFL. But I just think if you look at it, where you say, like, I don't think Notre Dame, obviously, like, compared to Ohio State, definitely. And, compared to just Penn State, they have like a couple guys who are going to go in the first round, like, pretty much guaranteed. And Texas is going to have like probably 2 or 3 first rounders, right? And Notre Dame doesn't have that. But yet I don't feel like there is like this huge talent gap there, because I think a lot of the guys, even though they're not like their best versions of themselves, they're going to be a year or 2 years down the line. Still think those guys are pretty good and pretty high end talents.
Well, like people don't view Riley Leonard as a high NFL pick or anything like that. Certainly not like Drew Aller, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's obviously very, very good, right? Like he you wouldn't look at him as like Notre Dame's deficient in talent at the quarterback position, right? Like a guy like Jordan Clark, where does he fit into the NFL? I don't know, but like he's a great nickel guy. You know, like he's a fantastic nickel corner, and he's been great for Notre Dame on that end. Like I don't think Notre Dame loses anything with him at corner. It's like you said about Xavier Watts. Like where does he go in the draft? I don't know, but he's playing better than any safety in college football right now. So from a talent standpoint, and when it comes to like Dane Brugler and who he's going to talk about, like he might view this matchup as a little bit different. Whereas like if it kind of reminds me of like when like the old school college basketball teams where it was like you have some of these very young teams going against some of these older, like you got a bunch of juniors and seniors who are only still in college because they're not going to be first round picks in the NBA draft. But like, shoot, man, they're great college players. Like they know how to win, they know how to play, and they've all been playing in the same system for a really long time, specifically Notre Dame's defense that way. Like that's how I kind of view Notre Dame. And it's like Georgia. Like I think if probably when Dane Brugler talked about the Georgia Notre Dame matchup, like he probably looked at all of Georgia's talent and all of Notre Dame's talent and it was like, well, like, you know, Georgia's got the more draftable players.
Yeah.
How did the game end up? Like, because Notre Dame, they're good enough to where it's like we can make plays and we're going to make plays, and our coaching is good enough to where we can kind of bridge whatever small gap that there is. So that's kind of how I see it. Like, I agree. Like, if you just look at the measurables and all that other stuff, like, look, but by the measurables, Malachi Starks is a better prospect than Xavier Watts. Xavier Watts has been a better football player throughout the rest of the whole year. He just has, right? And it's just the numbers bear it out. You know, I don't know what to say. They both played in a game. One of them was the MVP, and one of them is not playing anymore.
Yeah.
So,
like I think it's actually, you know, everyone always gets they always had to throw in the caveat when they're talking about Kyle Hamilton to you, Greg. Anyone who brings it up, they're like, I'm not just a Kyle Hamilton, Greg. Just so you know, but Xavier Watts is great. Like it's just like people got to do that. It is fun. It's very funny to me, but because I know how much you love Xavier Watts, right?
Right.
Which is why it's just hilarious, right? But it does kind of show too how like obviously Xavier Watts was an All-American last year. It was great last year, but he is a far better version of the player that he was last year. And it's like you really only got to see 2.5 years of Kyle Hamilton. And, you know, let's be honest, if he came back for his senior year, like, come on, like he would have taken another jump, like kind of like he did, he's done in the pros and all that too. And it's the same thing with like a Jalen Smith, who was obviously fantastic at Notre Dame, specifically in his junior year. I don't think people realize too that he was so much of like everything for that defense. And if he would have came back, man, it would not that have been so much fun to watch him play in Mike Elko's defense, working with Clark Lee. He would have just taken a mass. I mean, whatever, you know, like obviously the injury was terrible, but like he made the right move by going to the NFL. But I'm just saying, if hypothetically, if it was there, because the longer you have, the more time to develop. Obviously, you're going to get better for 90% of these guys, right? That's how it is. And I think that is something too, where it's like, if you just think about it, it's just some of these small things. Like if Xavier Watts easily could have gone to the NFL and just been like, you know what, I'm just going to bet on myself and I'm just going to go. And I bet he would have gone somewhere and then maybe he would have been, let's just say he was a 4th round pick or 5th round pick or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Well, he would have gone somewhere. And then by the end of the year, you're like, oh, Xavier's Watts is starting for the Saints. And you're like, he's really dude. And he's one of these guys that the NFL film guys, you know, on Twitter are always like, Xavier Watts is going to be a player. That's just what would have happened with him. And it just shows how fortunate Notre Dame wants for him to come back.
Well, I mean, there's a real world example, like to me, Blake Fisher is just like that. Where it's like Blake Fisher is now starting for the Texans, and he's a starting right tackle, right? And it's like
going to the NFL playoffs,
going to the NFL playoffs, and he's a starter on the line, and he'll probably it's kind of like in the Aaron Banks thing too. Like they kind of grew into it. They're good players, and that's why Notre Dame fans wanted them back because we knew they were good players, right? If Blake Fisher was on this team, you'd feel a lot better about things, right? Like if Blake Fisher was a starter on the Notre Dame football team. So that's kind of what Xavier Watts could have been.
Sorry to interrupt, but
yeah,
just do we want to mention, because they're talking about the flu outbreak.
Yeah, I mean, do you have? Listen, I was saving it. I was going to get to a bunch of comments.
Okay, yo, sorry.
No,
just because I see them kind of, it just seems to be all the talk in them.
Yeah, Jason Warnock, rumor of food poisoning affecting one or both teams. I think Tyler Horka posted that from On3. He posted that there was a flu going around the team. His tweet was it was mainly backups, is what he said. I don't really like. I've heard a lot about, like, we heard about this yesterday. Someone brought it up on our board. To me, maybe I don't know. I haven't checked actually if Matt has put up an update. If Matt hasn't posted anything, then there's nothing really out there that's actually reportable. In my opinion, it's one of those things like, what does this mean? The flu is going through the team. What does that mean? What are they? Are they all too sick to play? Like Jeremiah Love, he had flu symptoms against Indiana. He went for 98 yards and a touchdown, right? And he didn't seem physically compromised in that one either, from a health standpoint. So he was sick. He played. A lot of the things that I've heard about this is that whatever it is, it seems that the players are going to be fine to go ahead and play the game, and they won't be compromised physically. Have you heard anything different about it?
No, I mean, I've heard a bunch of different things, which is, this is also the time I think people have to remember, not to say that I'm not saying that it's, false information or anything like that, but people put stuff out there because they want to gain an edge. So there's, I saw stuff about like, man, Penn State's got it way worse. I'm like, okay, who knows really, right? And like, I know, like, obviously the flu is going around, like, you talk about Love getting it, and that obviously had an impact, and that was a few weeks ago, but it still. And I know, like, personally for me, like the Steelers, Cam Hayward was like sick, played with the flu last week, and he hasn't practiced pretty much all week. But also, he's a guy that he's old, and like part of his deal with the Steelers is like, hey, I'm saving it for game day.
Yeah.
Especially because they've had like a really condensed schedule at the end of the season, right? So you don't know how much all that kind of plays into everything and all that. And I mean, it's just always going to be one of those things. Like there was someone who brought up on Six Thoughts that they're like, they're worried about because how Notre Dame will be able to handle Penn State after playing Georgia, right?
Yeah.
And that it's just one of those things that I'm sure what will happen is if Notre Dame loses the game, there will be people who say, you know what, they went and they got beat up, and it was just a physical game against Georgia. They had the less than 2 days rest, and that was the difference in the game. People will say that. How true it is, who knows? But people will say that. On the other hand, if Notre Dame goes into this game and then they handle Penn State physically, and they're like, wow, Notre Dame was the way more physical team. It's like, well, look, they played Georgia the week before. Penn State played Boise State and SMU, and look, it's like so it just always kind of to fit someone's narrative and all that, and you just really don't know until they get out there and start playing and all that, right? So it's just you're just gonna have to kind of wait and see. I know whatever, like I have like a reputation of being measured with this stuff, and I don't mind it because like I think people should be measured with this because you just never know what the real situation is, and everyone is going through something different, and there's always something that's out there in a pregame situation of like, we mentioned about the Georgia Tech thing with Jeremiah Love, how like they took his props off the board, and is Jeremiah Love practicing this week? And like,
Yeah.
even Matt, who's like, obviously Matt is like super sourced up, the best guy on the beat by far. And I'm not just biased because obviously we work with him and he's a good friend of mine, but like, he's the best guy on the beat. And so he was hearing that there was stuff. So we're like, well, that was a possibility. Right. So it was like, okay. And then he went out and you're like, holy crap. Like he just played
There's nothing
amazing.
wrong.
Right. So
Yeah. Started the game, nothing wrong with it.
You just never know. And we'll just all see it game time.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying Jason Z. Would I rather be feared or loved?
Yeah.
Easy, both. I want people to be afraid of how much they love Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman via Michael Scott. Sam K asks, when's the last Orange Bowl Notre Dame won? The 95 or 96. It was a 96 Orange Bowl from the 95 season. Game is an early memory for me. And then Daniel Haskell says they won in 91. That's right. They did win in 91.
Yeah.
The refs cheated, and that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that they did. The score books would say the last time they won was the 1990 Orange Bowl when Notre Dame beat number 1 Colorado 21-6 in that one. Rocket had a reverse for a touchdown in that one. So that would be the last one, the 96 Orange Bowl. That's tough, man. That's a tough loss. That Notre Dame was up 26-14 in the fourth quarter, gave up what was it, 31 to 26. They lost the game. 17 fourth quarter points that they allowed in that one to lose. That's not great. That was Tom Krug filled in for Ron Paulus, who had broken his collarbone against Navy that year.
Wait, Dick Vitale's son-in-law? Is it Tom Krug?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. He went. He threw some bombs to Derek Mace. Had a great Derek Mace in the Orange Bowl Hall of Fame because of that. But that's we wish the Notre Dame fans wish that turned out differently. But it was a good game at least. Jason Z says you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott, Marcus Freeman. So,
Agreed.
So let's see. Let's go through some of this. We're talking about norovirus, flu bug. Okay, yeah, they were talking about that. Everyone is talking about that. Let's see. Tom Frawley says these fan bases that hate Notre Dame don't understand how tough and talented this team is now. They always say we are living in the past. I think those tables are turned now. I do think there is some validity to that, in that, like, I think other people are kind of living in the more recent past of Notre Dame, and kind of like there's an underestimation of how good this team is. It's been prevalent kind of throughout the year. I don't think it matters in terms of the outcome, right? It is possible that the Penn State team is kind of feeling like we can handle Notre Dame. You know, the bigger dogs are the Ohio States and the Georgias and the SECs and the Texases that we need to deal with. Those are the ones we can't beat. Notre Dame we can handle. There is a possibility of that.
Man, I think that is the wrong attitude to come into this game with.
I don't think the team has an attitude about it.
Oh, you think that's more the fan base?
Yeah. I don't think the actual team. Well, it's like I said in the intel thing. Like that's kind of what I took from it. But that I don't know how the players feel about this. It's just the way it is. Let's see. Let me get this. There's Robert Hallecky. Wow, thank you for the super chat, my man. This is very, very nice. Robert Hallecky, so glad we were able to have these big games. You guys are awesome. We are lucky to have you covering our Irish. Go Irish, 31-20. Hope we get one more game. This is great. Like Notre Dame, they have a chance. There is a narrative out there that you could easily grab that Notre Dame. I can go back. I can take this all the way back to like vanquishing demons and stuff like that, right? Like where Notre Dame never plays well in LA to end the year. Played a great game to end the year against USC. The best game they've played in LA literally since 1992. They had postseason playoff, couldn't get over the hump, beat Indiana in the playoffs. You got the playoff victory, right? Then you had the big bowl game. The big bowl game kind of cursed demons that you couldn't win a New Year's Six type bowl against Syracuse in the Sugar Bowl. Couldn't beat a Georgia team. Couldn't beat the SEC in those games. Beat Georgia. Right now, Notre Dame goes to the Orange Bowl, where they've got bad recent history in the Orange Bowl with, where they're in Miami, where they lost to Alabama in the national title game. They got crushed, right? So there's that kind of thing lingering. And then possibly you get to the national title game and you've got the Ohio State Demons that are sitting there. Lost 2 straight years to them in very close games. Marcus Freeman's old school. The narrative is there, Again, not nothing necessarily anything to do with the team, but the narratives do exist. So that's something we're monitoring. What do you think there, Jamie?
It is funny how like I saw something which was God, man, these there's always these things that come out. It's like where people I've never even heard of, who probably have more followers than me or anything, but I don't know, just talking about it. Like I just see people share it on like the ISD board about like, what are these rankings? And it's just some guy from this site that lists like, well, these are how the 4 teams stack up. And it was like ND defense 4th out of them. And like, Marcus Freeman 1st out of the head coaches, right? Which, I mean, it literally based on one game. I mean, obviously, he's done well, more than one game, but you know what I mean? Like, if he didn't win that one game, that's how the narrative flips with, how someone views Marcus Freeman or how someone views, a job that a coach does, right? Like that's how just things can just flip like that, and then that becomes something. Like I guarantee, like Al Golden, I think we knew as the season was going on last year that like, oh, he is just dialed in and was just at a different level way before that USC game. And then when that USC game happened, it was like everyone else was like, oh my gosh, like Al Golden. And that just became like, and then it became like a thing. And he's kind of ridden that now, obviously, to where he's at, and he's earned that reputation. But it was just like one game just kind of flips it, which is just like one of the kind of things with like James Franklin. Like, I think it's the most hilarious nickname of all time. Small game James is like, because obviously, I mean, you're a Lakers fan, big game James Worthy. Yeah. Which is honestly, that's probably the most badass nickname.
Big game James.
Big game James. Like, it's just like, it says it all. Like, it's like, hey, when it's time, this is the guy who steps up. Right. And small game James is like, you can't get anything more like, just no, you ain't got it, man. Right. So like, I'm not saying one game like this will change how everyone views about James Franklin, because I mentioned that he was 4-19 versus F+ top 10 teams since he's been at Penn State. And since 2016, he is, I believe it's like 1-16 or whatever it is against top 5 teams who are ranked in the top 5 or whatever, like right. 8 people or whatever. So like, if he gets to 2 and whatever, he probably should change. They can't start calling him Big Game James, but maybe a little bit less about them calling. Maybe they won't call him Little Game James or Small Game James until later on if they lose another one. But it's just like, as kind of things go and reputations change, it's like, when you stack up these kind of things, that's how the narrative changes, and that's how it all changes, right? So it's like one of those things where like Notre Dame didn't win this one, hadn't won a big bowl game since whatever, hadn't won this, and it's like, well, then they just won 2 playoff games and whatever, and then it's just immediately just all the dunking on Brian Kelly, which is fun. But yeah, that's just has happened, right? And I think it's all earned, but it's just like this is just like every little chance is another chance to do it, and you've got to be able to like the thing that Marcus Freeman has done so well this year is like since that NIU game is the team has played confident without believing all their kind of press clippings to just being like, I got to put in less work now. We're just this good, right? Because they know what's kind of gone there and they've just kind of followed up with it.
He's been lock set on the preparation is all that matters. Like nothing matters. Almost the results don't even matter as much as the preparation does. Like the results are a product of the preparation, you know? And so
which is very Nick Saban.
Right. He's very locked in. I mean, that's very like any successful kind of like, I mean, shoot, I'll go, you brought up big game, James. I'll go with Kobe. Like for him, Kobe talked at the end, after he retired, he talked about how like the journey was the dream and being able to actually put in the work to do the things that you can do in games and to perform. He's like, that was the actual dream, not the outcomes, you know? And so that's kind of that same mentality that Marcus Freeman has right now. John Simpson, thank you for the super chat. Go Irish, tame the Lions. Appreciate that. Appreciate you contributing to the show. I wanted to go to Chad Williams, posted boots on the ground. Here's what was texted to me yesterday. 4 is struggling with lateral quickness. Hope to get 20 to 25 snaps. That's referring to Jeremiah Love. How much does his health factor into your feeling on the game, if at all?
I mean, it factors in somewhat. Like if he can't play at all, I think, he is a guy that if he plays, whether he's 100% or not, you're expecting something out of him. Like you're expecting something out of him, even if he's not the exact same guy that he was, you're still expecting him to get maybe like 1 or 2, plays that are going to could be difference makers in the game, right? So, and it's just the same thing with like Abdul Carter. Like even if Abdul Carter plays, let's just say he plays 10 snaps, Abdul Carter. If he can come in and play 10 snaps and he's just pass rushing and he gets 2 sacks or like 3 pressures that absolutely like just like blow up a series, then everything was just worth it for him to play in that game. Right. So I think it just depends on that and, where he's at. And obviously there are things that are like adrenaline can kick in where all of a sudden someone does something where they don't things again, or there's someone who goes out and they give it a shot in the first play and it's like, no, it just doesn't happen. So I think Notre Dame is in a better spot if Love is hurt than if he can't play at all, if he comes in and he's just not even close to what he was. Yeah. First of all, 20 to 25 snaps from him in a game isn't like that far off of what he actually plays. Like,
yeah. And Chad later he's like, he doesn't think that 20-25 snaps is legit. I mean, to me, it's like, how many touches are you giving him, whether he's out there or whether he's not? Like, are you giving him the ball? And if you are, then great. I mean, I think you pointed it out. Like, it's not snaps. It's like, can he have a moment in the game? And the same thing with Abdul Carter. Like, can those guys have a moment where they affect the outcome? Because I think the thing about Jeremiah Love is that he has, and the same thing is true of Abdul Carter. Like those guys can do things that other people can't do. And can you get a moment out of them in the game that is something that it doesn't exist for any other player? And that could be like, if he's struggling with lateral quickness, then send him on a go, right? Like get it. Like, can you run a slot fade with him? Can you do that? Yeah. Like, can you get him on some kind of a wheel route, like something where he doesn't have to be cutting and things of that nature, right? Like, and they're trying to figure out the same thing with Abdul Carter, right? Like, these are great athletes, And so great athletes are able to do things that we cannot, we other players cannot do, So it's just like, can you get that? Can you get that out of those guys? And I think it's kind of an X factor on which team can get something out of their star who is hurt, right? It could be one play, it could be two plays. You never know. You want to get the most out of your abilities, and one company that gets the most out of everything that they can do, and they'll get the most out of your media company, your highlight reel, whatever it might be, your social media page, your website. VSR Media will get the most out of it, right? VSR Media, of course, founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh. VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. Someone brought up the press conference yesterday. Josh Buffalo, the motivational business banker, brought up Big Game James messed up, or Small Game James, I guess as people are calling him, messed up at the presser yesterday. He pissed off Freeman. You could tell Freeman has Notre Dame ready for battle. Franken is a frustrated like BK. Notre Dame wins 27-17, and OSU is praying Notre Dame loses.
This guy's, he's got the juice, man.
I like Josh
Buffalo. Full of it, full of the confidence.
Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker. I do think
Franklin,
I do think he made Marcus mad yesterday.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know that it matters in the game. I think he made him mad.
It doesn't matter in the game, but like, don't be a classless loser.
God.
Don't be a classless loser when your nickname is Small Game James. I really, I mean, I didn't do it, but I really almost wrote about how James Franklin as my last part of Six Thoughts today, about how he's just a guy you shouldn't root for and no one should root for, and about how like and I'm saying this is like when I knew him, I liked him. Like I was like, he's an engaging guy. I thought he was a good wide receivers coach and all that, like whatever. But I'm just someone, especially when it comes to like people who are vulnerable, like the children at, that were at Penn State who were not valued less than the football team.
Yeah.
Like the women that these men from Vanderbilt sexually assaulted, and he protected his players from, and he's done other stuff, shady stuff in terms of protecting other players with domestic violence charges against them and all that kind of stuff. Just despicable kind of stuff that you're like, you shouldn't root for this guy. You shouldn't root for this guy. Like, because you put football over everything, and all this stuff that's going on right now is, whenever there's something like, the terrorist attack in New Orleans, what's going on with everything in Southern California right now, with the fires and everything, Greg, and like just any of these other things that are going on, with the world. There's just so many other things. And I know everybody here loves football, loves Notre Dame football, and that's great. But you have to just realize that you can't put stuff over football. Like I saw people like the day of, one particular guy was like, hey, well, this gives like KVA and Spindler another chance, an extra day of rest or whatever kind of thing. And I'm like, maybe you can think that in your head. Maybe don't say that out loud, man.
Yeah.
When there was a terrorist attack and people died, and there's things that are more important in life than football. as important as Notre Dame football is to so many. And Penn State football, it's the same kind of thing where people, it is like a be all and end all for a lot of people. Um, don't put people or like people who are vulnerable. Don't put football or football players or your football team or trying to hide or protect your own reputation over that. I got no tolerance for any of that. So and then when small games James does that kind of stuff at the press conference, I'm just like, come on, man. Like, just what? Just be classy.
Just
Be classy.
just be normal. Like be a good,
Be normal.
like be a normal guy.
Be a normal person.
You don't got to talk to Marcus Freeman like he's a little boy. You don't have to do that. And you kind of did. And I know Marcus was not feeling it. That's a good question from Jason Z. What does Jadarian Price need to do to be super effective in the run game? I know he struggled earlier in the year during certain stretches. What specifically is needed from him to limit drop off from Jeremiah Love?
Well, I think some of it is, he's not the same in terms of, I don't think his vision is as good as Love's, and that's like part of it. So he doesn't quite have, and I don't think he has bad vision or anything like that, but I think, one of the things is he tends to always maybe look to bounce, or he not always look to bounce, but looks to bounce more than he should sometimes when there's like, oh, there's something there inside where he can get something. And so he's been tackled for loss more often than Love, partially because of it, where sometimes you got to just say, hey, 2 is good here.
Yeah.
And
I think he's less likely to make something out of little, like a gain of 4, like 2nd and 6 is good. Right. Better than obviously 2nd and 11 when you're trying to bounce it kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things actually he's done a lot better at is you don't see him do that as much. And I think he has been much better there. I mean, obviously he's a guy just like he is electric laterally, like just a special things like, and you've seen it on a lot of his long runs this year. The kickoff return against USC, that was like a special cut to be able to do that. So I think he's someone that, like most people have said, he would start for so many teams and would be like the main guy. And in a normal year, you'd be like, Jadarian Price, just awesome. And people would just be fawning over him. So I don't think it's like crazy to think that like if Price came in this game and Price has like 20 carries, it's not out of the question that he just goes off because he breaks off because he's getting more chances and he breaks off something. But it's going to be about like continuing to kind of do what he's done to, kind of have that patience to not get in those negative situations. Because obviously he's a guy, he's great after contact. He's a guy who it's very hard to tackle. It's very hard to tackle him, but he has to just be smart about how he's doing it. And I think he has been a lot smarter about it.
I think he does have like there's a Julius Jones quality to him.
Yeah.
There's good like call. A Dexter Williams quality to him where it's like, man, he can have like 14 carries. 9 of those are stuffs. And 5 of those are for like 30 plus, or like there's like a 20-yard run in there. There's a 15-yard run in there. There's a 60-yard run in there. Like it's like he could just be, you can bottle him up and then it's like, oh God, he's in the open. And it's like, he's dynamic. He's just absolutely dynamic, in the open field. So it's like, does he have a special game in him like that? And I think he could, honestly. It's one of those things, like someone brought up Chris Mitchell hasn't really had a moment yet. I think he could have a moment. And I think, last game was kind of the portal game. I think this could be like the Jadarian Price game. I really believe that.
I think it's just like Dexter, as you brought up, Greg, that like, he's just one of those guys that it only takes one to just be like, and wow, like it's
give
just
him one crease.
that Texas A&M, that was like Texas A&M, or even the end of Purdue. And I know it's Purdue. Yeah, I get it. But that was like they were running up the clock.
Yeah,
and he was just like, oh, he's just gonna take it 70 to the crib. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and he can just like the USC game, like he had the 35-yard run, and then he had that other long run, and I think maybe one other one that was 15, 20 yards, and it's like that's all you need.
And that was huge when
right.
he was Love was out. Yeah.
Yeah. So Irish One says, how about a prediction of Notre Dame's running and passing yardage? Does Notre Dame hit 175 in running? Guaranteed win with 200 plus rushing yards. Does Notre Dame beat last week's 90 yards passing? So my prediction for this game was 34-30. Notre Dame wins. And I really struggled this week, and I put it in the write-up on our predictions, is that like I knew I was going to pick Notre Dame to win because I feel like they're better, and I feel like they are just Marcus Freeman's found the special sauce. And so I think they're going to find a way to win this game. I just couldn't wrap my mind around how I think the game is going to go, because I feel like it could go a couple of different ways. My first instinct, like maybe 3-4 days ago, was like, I think Penn State's going to move the ball on Notre Dame. I just think they are going to find a gear. And I think Kettle Nicky, one thing he's good at is he can game plan to do the things that have kind of hurt Notre Dame in the past. I think Landon talked about this a lot with the way USC uses motion and things like that. Like, I think Kettle Nicky can find those little matchups there, and I think that they can just and you put I think you put in your write-up, like, Drew Aller is very much more comfortable when he's throwing against man than he is against zone. Notre Dame plays a lot of man. They play the most man, in fact. So I think they're just going to find things there. But I also think Notre Dame's offense, as much as the last game was the defense kind of just putting the offense in great positions and in special teams, like, I think that this will be a game where the offense kind of picks up the defense a little bit. I think people make the mistake of thinking because the last game was poor offensively, then that's how it's going to be all the time. It could be speed. They had a down game, and then they have a bounce back, right? You can have a bad game. The best teams, or the teams that end up being champions, are the teams that, like, the offense and the defense don't have a bad day at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And I think that Notre Dame's offense is going to pick them up. So I think they'll go over. I think they're going to approach like 400 yards total offense in this game. And so 34-30 is what I predicted.
I don't know what, like, I'm not good at like picking of like what exactly like the yardage is going to be or anything like that. But like, I guarantee you, like, just briefly as you were talking, Greg, I was like just scanning like every game Notre Dame's rushed for 200 yards or the last whatever. It's like, yeah, they win every game. Like, if you rush for 200 yards, most of the times that means you ran it like 40 times.
Yeah.
And if you ran it 40 times, that means like you had total control of the game. Yeah. You had the ball, you had total control of the game. So it's like game control, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just like the same thing. Like, if Notre Dame gives up 200 yards rushing, like, they're probably not winning the game. Like, it's just kind of what it is, right? Like, and which is obviously you can give up 300 passing and still win a game, right? Like, and you can throw for 300 and lose a game, and where it's just like, it's different. And that's why, as much as it's a passing game now, running the football, there's still so much control of the game that you can have. And like, it can dictate everything, and also can set up explosives and all this. I would be shocked if they didn't throw it for more than 90 yards in this game. I think that's one of the things with Penn State. Like, they will give stuff up in the passing game. They've given up a bunch of stuff in, explosives in the last few games. Like, that is something to kind of watch. And it just, in general, they're not like where Notre Dame's defense, for the most part, does not give up too many explosives. Like, they're one of the best, right? They're like top 15 in the country, just in overall of like limiting explosives. and Penn State is not. Like they're closer to like mid, and they're way further down in terms of what they've done in the passing game. Like they've given up stuff in the secondary. I think they've given up 11 explosive. No, what is it? Hold on. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, they've given up a bunch. Yeah, I think it was 11 in the last few games or whatever, right? So that kind of stuff is like that will happen, and I imagine that they're going to have more chances, you know, to create these in this game than they would have against Georgia. I think that's going to happen, and like Georgia's just a little bit more sound in that area too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're gonna see that in this game. The tackling thing, 57 missed tackles.
It's a big
in
deal.
The last 3 games,
especially against a team like Notre Dame, like in Jadarian Price, where it's like if you miss a tackle, you could be in trouble.
And the thing is too is that like and someone asked me the question about like, oh, because people have said that, oh, they tackle really well, and I was like, well, maybe you just thought because hey, they limited Ashton Jonty, that's why they tackled really well. But really, he forced 16 missed tackles in that game. The problem was it wasn't just one guy winning up front for them, or they had several guys win. So when that happens, you're just like, you can make 2 guys miss, and then still the third guy comes in and it's a 1-yard gain, right? So the key is like what Notre Dame is typically, you might have one guy miss and not do their job or whatever. But if everybody else is doing their job, you can still create a big play, because if one guy misses, then that could lead to just a huge, huge play, right? So that's all it takes. I think that they'll have that. I do want to mention the part, because I thought this is something that's worth bringing up too about Kotal Nikki, is the one thing that I think it's something that could either like really come back to bite them in a way, because his like penchant for being like, all right, we're in this area of the field, gotta throw a gadget here, double pass here, this whatever, right? And obviously when it works, it's like, wow, great call, whatever, right? But when it goes bad, it's obviously not, and that's something that you don't see Notre Dame give up a lot of that stuff. They're typically pretty disciplined.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that could backfire on Kotal Nikki, but I also think that you can see something where I think he's done a good job, particularly with their stuff in the red zone, of just like setting stuff up and being like, okay, we got the call here. And that's part of the reason why Aller's numbers look good, because it's like, I mean, he just schemed up a great call and then he just threw to a guy who's wide open.
Yeah. Drew Rosenhaus is on the Pat McAfee show, and I guess he's the agent for Abdul Carter. A true game time decision, he says. Which, I mean, it's his agent, right? So he's putting out there. To me, the agent going up there and talking about it tells me he's going to play, just because that's what agents kind of do. It's like true game time decision. He's a warrior and all this other stuff. But like, it's like, if you're just a game time decision like that, how effective can you be, right? Like, it's going to be like Jeremiah Love. Can they, again, like we talked about before, can we, what can we get out of him is what Penn State is asking. Can we get 1 or 2 plays, a one game-changing play from him? Is it possible?
Yeah, it says he's not healthy. And, and so what that means for, the game, and we've seen it, where guys warm up and it's like, oh, they can't go, or they look just completely different, right? So I don't know. And it's different
I'll never
too.
Forget that Louisville game with Christian Gray.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's going to play the whole week, and then he's with the first team and warm-ups, and everything comes out.
Also a shoulder. Also a shoulder.
Also a shoulder. Yeah.
And I bet when that was happening, they thought he was going to play, and then like, okay, well, we're good. And then when Ben Morrison left the game, they were like, oh no, like
Get
it's like
get them ready.
like whatever, just like cue just like the doom music playing or whatever. But yeah, it could have been bad. I think the stuff with it, I mean, Rosenhaus obviously, whatever, it'll either be like, man, he did everything he can to get on the field.
Yeah.
So and I'm sure, I mean, of course the guy wants to play. Of course he wants to play and be out there, right? Of course he wants to play. Just like how Jeremiah Love, like, I bet if this was Stanford in the middle of the season, Jeremiah Love would not be playing this week, but it's a playoff game and you're going to do it. Just like how Trevor Etienne in the SEC championship game, he had like bad ribs, and then he just, played in that game and then ended up playing great. So we'll see.
You just never know. One last prediction, I think. Well, hold on, let me check this here. All right. One last prediction before we go. Sam K. Let's hear a prediction for the starting line next year.
Yeah, there you go.
Jamie loves that. Deep cut from Sam K. Good job by you.
This is why we appreciate you, Sam K. You're coming in here. This out, obviously we see you all the time, so I know you're a loyal listener anyways. Yeah. But you could have just popped in out of nowhere and said that, and then we'd know that, hey, this guy's an H&H loyalist.
Let's go. Robert Halleck, he says, officially taking off work tomorrow. I don't think anyone's really working today. But we can
probably everyone who's listening to this is not doing work.
We can end it there. Thank you everyone for tuning in today. If you like what you heard here, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so whenever it is we're going to go live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. We'll be back tonight after the game. Jamie and I will be doing a post-game show. I'll send it to Mike, see if he's available to do that. So yeah, that's what's going to be. We'll have a post-game show tonight. We're going to have we'll have a day after show tomorrow. Could just be me like normal. Maybe Jamie, we'll see what Jamie's got going on. If he's got to do a bunch of write-ups and stuff and film reviews and things of that nature. So Jamie's got other work to do. So we'll be back. We'll talk to you afterwards. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Enjoy the game. Keep hitting and hustling.